Barbie, the Pearl Princess. Adapted by Kristen L. Dumpkin, based on the screenplay by Sidney Clark and Stephen Granite, illustrated by the Occult Design Group. A Golden Book. In the underwater kingdom of Seagonia, a beautiful mermaid princess was born with the royal gift of pearl magic. She could make pearls move, dance, and glow in different colors without even touching them. The king and queen were thrilled to have a daughter, but the king's brother-in-law, Caligo, was not happy. Caligo had hoped that his son, Fergus, would one day inherit the throne. But the birth of the princess meant that Fergus was no longer the rightful heir. And so Caligo came up with an evil plan. Caligo ordered a mean old mermaid named Skyla to do away with the princess merbaby. When Skyla snuck into the nursery, however, she instantly fell in love with the baby and decided to save her. She took her far away from the kingdom and the dangerous Caligo. The king and queen were heartbroken. Caligo was pleased that his plan had worked, or so he thought. Skyla named the merbaby Lumina and secretly raised her as her own. Before long, the princess grew into a beautiful young mermaid. Lumina had no idea about her past, but her pearl powers became stronger every day. She loved creating magical pearl hairstyles for her seahorse friend Kuda. The two would dress up and pretend they were royalty. "Do you think we'll ever get to see the castle?" Lumina said to Kuda one day. "Maybe someday," replied Kuda. Meanwhile, at the castle, Caligo was trying to convince the king and queen to give Fergus the Pearl of the Sea, a royal medallion that would make him the kingdom's next ruler. Caligo didn't care that Fergus was a shy young man who only dreamed of becoming a botanist. The king and queen were hesitant, but Caligo convinced them that the kingdom was in need of an heir. "Perhaps it is time," said the queen. The king agreed. The next step of Caligo's wicked plan was in motion. The following day, Murray, an eel who worked for Caligo, arrived in Skyla's cave. Murray told Skyla the king would toast Fergus with a cup of mareberry nectar, and Caligo wanted Skyla to poison it. "Do it, or I'll tell everyone how you did away with the princess," Murray threatened. The eel gave Skyla an invitation to the royal ball. "It's Saturday at the castle." Just then, Lumina came in. "What about the castle?" she asked eagerly. Skyla looked nervously from Lumina to Murray. "And who is this?" asked Murray. Skyla explained that Lumina was her niece, then hurried Murray out of the cave. The eel slithered away, intrigued. "Did he mean the royal castle?" asked Lumina when Murray left. "Are you going there? Can I go? Please?" "Absolutely not," replied Skyla as she packed a bag. "It's far too risky for a young girl. I'll be back in a few days." She kissed Lumina goodbye and headed out the door. A little while later, Lumina found an envelope on the table. It was the invitation to the ball. Skyla had left it behind. Lumina turned to Kuda. "Skyla can't get into the royal ball without this. It's our duty to go after her all the way to the castle if we have to. This is our big chance." Kuda protested, but Lumina was determined. Before long, they were swimming toward the castle. Lumina and Kuda were passing through a dark kelp forest when they suddenly heard a roar. A large, spiky fish jumped out at them. His name was Spike, and he was a stonefish. "You'd better move it," he warned. "Each of my poisonous spikes means a terrible, horrible end for you." Lumina had a feeling Spike was being mean because he was lonely. She believed in leaving things better than she found them, so she quickly waved her hand. Magical pearls zipped out of a pouch she kept around her waist and landed on each of the fish's sharp spikes, making them safe. "Now what am I supposed to do?" cried Spike sadly. "Just be nicer," said Lumina. "Once no one's afraid of you, I bet you'll have loads of friends." "We're heading to the city. There's lots of fish there. You could practice being friendly to them." The three friends swam off together and soon spotted magnificent buildings twinkling in the distance. "The castle!" Lumina cried. They had arrived in Seagonia. Once they got closer, they could see that the kingdom was full of skyscrapers with shiny spiral tops. Merfolk swam in all directions in the bustling city. Suddenly, Lumina spotted Skyla crossing the street. Lumina reached into her bag for the invitation to the ball, but she couldn't find it. "Uh-oh," she said. "I must have lost it in the kelp." "She'll be angry we left the reef," said Kuda. "Come on." She pulled Lumina into a nearby shop before Skyla could see them. As soon as they were inside, Lumina felt a giant tentacle grab her. She looked around to discover that she was in a beauty salon. The owner, Madame Ruckus, was a dazzling octopus with a fancy hairdo, and she thought Lumina was her new stylist. "This way, sweetie," said Madame Ruckus. "I'll get you all set up." She yanked Lumina past manicure and telecure stations and brought her to a styling chair. "Here's your first customer," Madame Ruckus said. She sat a young mermaid in Lumina's chair and then whirled away to answer the phone. Lumina didn't want to disappoint her first client. She grabbed a handful of pearls from her pouch and magically arranged them in the mer-girl's hair. "I love it!" cried the mer-girl when Lumina was done. Everyone else in the salon loved the hairdo too, and soon they were all asking for one-of-a-kind styles. Lumina had a job. Back at the castle, Murray told Caligo that Skyla had a niece. The eel also showed Caligo something he had found in Skyla's cave, a bracelet that had once belonged to the baby princess. Suspicious, Caligo gave Murray an order: "Find that girl." The next day at the salon, Madame Ruckus told everyone that they were invited to the royal ball. Lumina couldn't believe it. She had always wanted to visit the castle and see real royalty, and now she was going to the royal ball that night. There was just one problem. "What are we going to wear?" asked the other stylists at the salon. Lumina and her friends went shopping for ball gowns, but there weren't many left. Lumina knew she could make things a little better than they found them. I think we could do a lot with what's here, she suggested. Add some ribbons, a few flowers, a little braid, and presto, our very own original styles. Lumina was so busy helping the others, she returned to the salon without a gown for herself. Ladies, grab everything you can find here that's made of fabric, ordered Madame Ruckus. Cora and Sandrine, two other hairstylists, gathered drapes and shampoo capes and worked hard on a gown for their new friend. Several hours later, the royal ballroom was filled with merfolk. The seashell chandelier glittered over the marble dance floor, where Cora and Sandrine were dancing with their friends. An ornate throne had been set up at the head of the room for the king and queen. Even Spike was there, his pearl-tipped spikes a hit with the crowd. Suddenly, everyone gasped. Lumina had appeared at the top of a grand staircase, her pink gown shimmering with pearls. She looked stunning. Girl sure knows how to make an entrance, said Sandrine. Everyone noticed Lumina, especially Caligo. He quickly realized that Lumina was the girl he had been looking for, the long-lost princess. Caligo whisked her off to a dungeon so that she couldn't interfere with his plans. But Lumina quickly used her pearl powers to escape. As she made her way back to the ballroom, she heard Skyla's voice. "Your nectar for the toast, sir," Skyla said. Lumina was stunned when she discovered that Skyla had prepared poisoned nectar for the king. "I don't know what to believe," Lumina told Kuda when they met up. "We've got to help." Moments later, the king and queen took their places on the throne. The king presented the Pearl of the Sea to Fergus. Skyla handed the cup of poisoned nectar to the king as he prepared to give a toast. "To the future ruler of Seagonia," said the king. "To Fergus." "No!" Skyla shouted when the king raised his cup. She rushed toward him, but guards held her back. Just then, Lumina burst in and knocked the cup out of the king's hand. The crowd gasped. "Arrest her!" Caligo ordered the guards. "Let her go!" cried Skyla. "She saved the king!" Skyla began to explain that Caligo had ordered her to poison the king's drink. Caligo stopped her by plucking a pearl from one of Spike's poisonous spikes and pushing Skyla right into its tip. "Aunt Skyla!" screamed Lumina. Lumina began to cry. She turned to Spike. "There must be an antidote," she pleaded. "The sulfur lily," said Spike sadly, "but it's extremely rare. I've never even seen it." "There's one right here," said a voice. It was Fergus. He had a sulfur lily in his flower collection. "You fool!" shouted Caligo. "You can be king." "I don't want to be king," replied Fergus. "I want to be a botanist." Lumina was about to put the sulfur lily on Skyla's wound when Caligo ordered his guards to capture them both. "Don't you touch her!" shouted Lumina. She closed her eyes and summoned every pearl in the room. They whooshed through the crowd and formed a swirling pearl tornado, stopping Caligo's guards. As Fergus knelt down to give Skyla the sulfur lily petals, the king and queen looked at each other. Lumina's pearl powers could only mean one thing. She was their daughter. "Aunt Skyla, please stay with me," urged Lumina. Slowly, the old woman's eyes began to open. She smiled at Lumina. Then she pointed to Caligo. "It was him," said Skyla. "He's the one who ordered me to poison your majesty." "The old hag is delusional," shouted Caligo as he began to move toward the exit. Lumina waved her arms and hundreds of pearls whirled around the villain, blocking his escape. "Guards!" shouted the king and pointed to Caligo and his henchmen. "Lock up these traitors." Then the king turned to Lumina. "You have the royal gift, the pearl magic. Could you be our daughter?" the queen asked. Lumina looked at them in confusion. "She is," said Skyla. "Years ago, Caligo paid me to do away with her, but I couldn't do it, so I raised her instead, away from him. I'm so sorry." "In that case, this belongs to Lumina," said Fergus, and he placed the pearl of the sea around Lumina's neck. Lumina's tail magically glowed blue to pink, then purple to a glistening gold. Then her dress transformed into a pearlescent pink gown, and a sparkling pink tiara appeared on her head. The crowd cheered. "Welcome home," said the king. Lumina couldn't have been happier. She had been reunited with her mother and father and had a royal palace to live in. Skyla and Kuda could even come to live with her. She felt like a princess inside and out. "Music, please," called the king, and the band began to play again. Princess Lumina danced the night away with her family and friends, old and new.